Money is one of the few things in life that touches everyone, yet almost no one truly understands it. You can have a PhD in finance and still go broke, while a quiet janitor with no formal education can retire a millionaire. Why? Because being good with money isn't about what you know. It's about how you behave. That's the soul of the psychology of money. Morgan Housel's timeless message that wealth isn't just built by intelligence or opportunity, but by mindset, patience, and emotional discipline. The book unravels the invisible forces behind how we think about money, greed, fear, envy, contentment, and comparison, and how those emotions silently shape our financial destiny. Picture this. A man named Ronald Red, a janitor who worked at a gas station for decades, lived a modest life, and died with an $8 million fortune. Meanwhile, a brilliant Harvard-educated investor, Richard Fuscone, a man who once managed billions, went bankrupt. Same world, same opportunities. Two opposite outcomes. The difference wasn't luck or IQ, it was behavior. That's the strange paradox of money. It rewards not the smartest, but the most patient. Not the one who knows the most, but the one who controls their emotions the best. Every decision you make with money, saving, spending, investing, is driven by psychology more than mathematics. That's what makes this book so powerful. It exposes the truth that wealth has more to do with character than calculation. And it begins with the first great truth, that no one is crazy when it comes to money. Each of us has lived a unique life, shaped by different eras, struggles, and experiences. Someone who grew up during a recession sees risk differently from someone who grew up during a bull market. A person who lost their home in 2008 will never view mortgages the same way again. To one person, the stock market is an exciting opportunity. To another, it's a trap. Both are right, because both are shaped by their own experiences. That's why we make choices that sometimes seem irrational from the outside. Because our financial decisions aren't made in spreadsheets. They're made in the emotional space between fear and hope. Morgan Housel reminds us that money is deeply personal. What seems foolish to one person might make perfect sense to another. Understanding this truth helps us stop judging others' financial decisions, and more importantly, stop being too harsh on our own. But understanding money isn't just about knowing your emotions. It's also about recognizing what truly matters in the long game, and that's time. Compounding, the most powerful force in finance, isn't about high returns. It's about consistency over decades. Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in history, built the majority of his wealth after his mid-60s. If he had retired early, we might never have heard his name. His secret wasn't just brilliance, it was endurance. He started investing young and never stopped. That's the quiet magic of compounding. Small, steady growth that explodes over long periods. Yet most people never get to experience it because they get impatient. We live in an age of instant gratification, quick profits, viral wins, overnight success. But real wealth is built in silence, through the boring consistency of doing the right things long enough. That's why Housel says, the most important part of every plan is to plan on the plan not going according to plan. Because the market and life will always surprise you. The people who survive aren't those who predict the future. They're the ones who adapt when it changes. Money, after all, is not a science. It's a story. And how you tell that story determines how you live. Take the story of Jesse Livermore, one of the greatest stock traders in history. In 1929, during the Great Crash, while millions lost everything, he made what would be worth hundreds of millions today. He became a legend. But just a few years later, he lost it all again, not because his strategy failed, but because his emotions did. He couldn't stop chasing risk. It's a haunting reminder that wealth built fast is fragile, but wealth built patiently becomes unshakable. And this brings us to one of the most profound truths Housel shares. Getting rich and staying rich are two completely different skills. Getting rich requires optimism, the belief that the future will reward your efforts. Staying rich requires paranoia, the awareness that success can vanish in an instant. You need both, the courage to take risks and the humility to protect yourself from them. That's the balance that separates those who keep wealth from those who lose it. Most people fail not because they don't make money, but because they don't protect it. They let greed whisper that more will always be better. But more is a moving target. No matter how high you climb, there's always someone higher. And envy quietly poisons satisfaction. In a world that measures success by comparison, it's easy to forget that the real goal of money isn't to impress others. It's to give yourself control over your time. True wealth, Housel argues, isn't about buying things. It's about buying freedom, the ability to wake up and do what you want, when you want, with whom you want. That's the ultimate dividend of money, autonomy. And yet that's what so few people achieve, because they keep trading freedom for appearances. Every luxury bought for validation steals a little bit of independence. Every unnecessary risk taken for status chips away at peace of mind. That's the irony of the modern money chase. We often sacrifice the very freedom we're trying to buy. The truly wealthy aren't the ones who have the most, but those who need the least. There's a story Morgan Housel shares that perfectly captures the strange, unpredictable nature of money. In 2008, as the global financial system was collapsing, a man named Rajat Gupta, a self-made millionaire and managing director at McKinsey, made a single phone call that destroyed his legacy. He leaked confidential information to a hedge fund manager, hoping to earn a few million more. This was a man who already had everything: wealth, reputation, influence. But it wasn't enough. Greed whispered louder than gratitude. He risked everything for just a little more, and lost it all. That's the tragedy of never having enough. Housel argues that enough is one of the most powerful and most ignored concepts in finance. Because without it, no amount of success feels like success. There's always someone richer, younger, flashier. Comparison becomes a cage that no wealth can unlock. Wealth is fragile when built on ego, because ego is insatiable. The difference between wealth and status is simple. Wealth is quiet, status is loud. You can't always see true wealth because it hides in the things you don't buy, the car you didn't upgrade, the house you didn't stretch for, the luxuries you skip to keep peace of mind. That's the part most people miss. Real wealth is invisible. It's the unspent income sitting quietly in your account, compounding in silence. And the moment you understand that, your relationship with money changes forever. Because money is never just about numbers, it's about stories. And no story about money is complete without acknowledging luck. Luck is the invisible hand that shapes more outcomes than we care to admit. Bill Gates attended one of the only high schools in America that had a computer in 1968. That single stroke of luck gave him access to technology that changed his life and the world. But right down the road, in another Seattle school, there was another student just as smart and ambitious who never got that chance. Luck, Housel reminds us, is not a sign of weakness. It's a reminder of humility. Because while we can control effort, we can never fully control outcome. Every success story is built on both skill and circumstance. That doesn't mean success is undeserved. It means it's incomplete without gratitude. And here's the catch. Luck cuts both ways. Sometimes, you do everything right and still fail. The market turns. A job disappears. A pandemic shuts the world down. Understanding luck teaches us to be kind to others and to ourselves. It keeps arrogance in check when things go well and despair in check when they don't. That balance between confidence and humility is what allows people to stay grounded in the unpredictable game of money. Because money, at its core, is not just about growing wealth. It's about surviving long enough for compounding to work its magic. And survival means respecting risk. One of the hardest truths in finance is that most people fail not because they make bad decisions, but because they make good decisions that they can't sustain. They over-leverage, overspend, or overestimate their control over the future. Survival, Housel says, is the single most important factor in financial success. Because you can't compound what you lose. Think about it. The world's best investors don't aim for the highest returns. They aim for the most durable ones. They stay in the game. That's why Warren Buffett famously said, the first rule of compounding: never interrupt it unnecessarily. It's not sexy advice. It's not thrilling or dramatic, but it's the quiet truth behind every fortune that lasts. And the key to surviving? A powerful, underrated virtue, saving. Most people think saving is about numbers, cutting costs, building budgets. But Housel reframes it as something entirely different. Saving is the gap between your ego and your income. If your ego grows faster than your income, you'll always be poor. But if you can shrink your ego and live below your means, you'll always have options. And options are the real currency of freedom. Saving isn't about being cheap. It's about being independent. It's the bridge between stress and serenity. Because when you have savings, you buy yourself time to think, to recover, to pivot when life surprises you. That's what real wealth gives you. Control over your time and your choices. There's a moment in everyone's life when they realize the true cost of chasing money isn't money itself. It's time. You can always earn more money. You can never earn more time. And this is where Housel's message hits deepest. Money is simply a tool for buying the life you want. But most people spend their lives serving the tool instead of mastering it. Imagine a person who works 80 hours a week to buy a mansion they barely live in, driving a car they're too tired to enjoy. They have wealth, but not freedom. They've bought the illusion of success, not the reality of happiness. Housel shows that happiness and wealth don't always travel together. True happiness comes not from having more, but from needing less. And that realization, that less can actually mean more, is one of the most liberating financial truths you can ever learn. Because when you stop chasing more, you finally start living enough. That's when money becomes a servant, not a master. And it's this emotional mastery, not financial literacy, that separates the financially free from the financially trapped. Money doesn't just amplify what you can buy, it amplifies who you are. That's why some people grow more generous as they grow richer, while others grow more restless. Because wealth doesn't create character, it reveals it. Morgan Housel makes a haunting observation. No one thinks they're greedy. Yet almost everyone is in small, invisible ways. Greed isn't always about wanting more money. Sometimes it's the quiet dissatisfaction that creeps in when someone else's success reminds you of your own limits. You scroll through social media and see someone celebrating their new car, their dream vacation, their overnight success. A whisper forms, "I deserve that too." And that whisper, subtle, almost harmless, is the first spark of financial self-sabotage. Because when you start measuring your life with someone else's ruler, you lose sight of your own progress. That's why the most dangerous financial move isn't buying the wrong stock. It's building your self-worth on comparison. Money, Housel reminds us, is a mirror. It reflects your insecurities as clearly as your ambitions. He writes about the thin line between ambition and greed, and how crossing it usually happens not out of evil, but out of fear. The fear of missing out. The fear of not being enough. The fear of being forgotten. In the 1990s, when the dot-com boom was minting millionaires overnight, a quiet voice echoed through every trading floor. "If I don't take the risk now, I'll fall behind." That voice, not logic, not strategy, drove countless investors to chase unsustainable highs. When the bubble burst, they weren't just broke, they were disillusioned. They realized too late that wealth built on envy burns out faster than it grows. And yet, even after every crash, the same pattern repeats. Because our relationship with money isn't rational, it's emotional. Fear and greed, those two ancient instincts, are like the tides of the market. They rise and fall endlessly, shaping fortunes and destroying them. The people who win in the long run are not the ones who predict the tides, but the ones who learn to stand firm through them. Housel emphasizes a truth that sounds almost too simple to be profound. Your success as an investor depends far less on your intelligence than on your temperament. The ability to stay calm when everyone else is panicking. The humility to take small, consistent gains instead of chasing big, risky wins. The patience to let time, not timing, work for you. That's how wealth is built. In 2008, when the world seemed to be collapsing, some investors sold everything in fear. Others, like Buffett, stayed the course, not because they had a crystal ball, but because they had conviction. They understood that panic and profit rarely live in the same room. And this idea that money rewards patience, not emotion, goes beyond investing. It applies to life itself. Think of compounding, not just in finance, but in effort, in relationships, in personal growth. The small habits that seem insignificant today, saving a little, learning a little, improving a little, become extraordinary when given enough time. But time only works for those who let it. Most people interrupt compounding by giving up too soon. They abandon strategies that work slowly, chasing shortcuts that promise speed. But shortcuts rarely lead to freedom. They lead to cycles of burnout and regret. The irony of money is that the more you try to rush it, the more it runs from you. That's why patience is more than a financial virtue. It's a mindset. And yet, patience is almost impossible in a world built on immediacy. We check stock prices every hour, compare lifestyles every day, and measure success in likes and views. But wealth doesn't grow on that timeline. The most powerful investment you can make isn't in a market. It's in your perspective. Because when you shift your focus from how fast to how far, everything changes. That's what Housel calls reasonable optimism. The belief that, yes, the world is messy, unpredictable, unfair, but progress still happens, quietly and steadily. That kind of optimism is grounded, not naive. It knows setbacks will come, but trusts that endurance wins in the end. It's the same mindset that kept long-term investors steady through recessions, kept entrepreneurs persistent through failures, and kept ordinary people saving through uncertainty. Because the ultimate truth about wealth isn't that it makes life easy, it makes life flexible. It gives you room to breathe, room to recover, room to live on your own terms. That's the real return on investment, not just money, but peace. Peace from anxiety, peace from dependence, peace from needing to impress anyone but yourself. When you understand that, the game changes. You stop asking, how much can I make? And start asking, how long can I sustain this? That's the mindset shift that separates temporary success from lasting freedom. And freedom, true freedom, is what every financial dream secretly craves. Because no matter how much you earn, if your schedule is still controlled by someone else, you're not rich, you're just busy. The wealthiest people aren't those with the biggest houses or fastest cars. They're the ones who own their mornings, who wake up with choice, not obligation. And that's why Housel's message feels so timeless, because it's not about getting rich fast. It's about staying rich forever, in every sense of the word. But before that kind of peace is possible, there's one more psychological trap we need to confront: the illusion of control. The belief that if we just learn enough, plan enough, analyze enough, we can predict and master everything about money. It's comforting, but it's wrong. The truth is, uncertainty is permanent. No spreadsheet can forecast human emotion. No algorithm can capture global chaos. The markets don't move because of numbers. They move because of people. And people are unpredictable. That's why every great investor, deep down, is part philosopher. They understand that risk is not something to eliminate. It's something to respect. Because risk is what makes reward possible. And the people who thrive aren't those who avoid risk, but those who build lives strong enough to handle it. There's a moment in life when you realize that wealth, no matter how vast, means nothing if you're still restless inside. That's where the psychology of money leads us, to the quiet understanding that money is never the goal. It's just a mirror reflecting what we value most. For some, that mirror shows fear, the constant need to protect. For others, it shows desire, the hunger to acquire. But for those who learn its lessons, that mirror finally shows freedom. Freedom from the need to prove anything. Freedom from the race no one ever wins. Freedom from living by someone else's scoreboard. Morgan Housel says something simple yet profound. The hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving. Because in a world that celebrates more followers, more cars, more income, satisfaction feels like surrender. But it's not. It's mastery. The day you stop chasing more and start protecting enough, you've already won the game. Look at the people who seem happiest, not richest, happiest. They all share something in common: clarity. They know what's worth their time, what's worth their peace, and what's not. And that's the hidden wisdom behind money. It forces you to define what enough looks like for you. Because until you do, the chase never ends. We live in a time where people will risk everything, their health, their marriages, their sanity, to climb ladders they don't even want to be on. And yet, the truth has always been simple. Wealth that costs peace isn't wealth. It's debt disguised as success. You can't enjoy freedom if you're chained to comparison. You can't feel rich if you're addicted to validation. Housel's message hits hardest here. The greatest dividend money pays isn't luxury. It's control over your time. That's what people truly want, the ability to wake up and say, "Today I decide." Time is the currency we spend whether we like it or not. And the wealthy aren't those who have the most, but those who spend time on what matters most. When you realize that, your priorities shift. You stop seeing money as a finish line and start seeing it as a tool. A tool for living a life that feels fully yours. And the irony? Once you stop obsessing over money, you start handling it better. Because good decisions come from clarity, not pressure. You stop chasing high-risk shortcuts and start valuing stability. You stop gambling with your peace and start protecting it like an inheritance. And that's when wealth starts to compound, quietly, invisibly, steadily. But it doesn't end there. Because true wealth isn't measured in accounts. It's measured in perspective. Housel reminds us that we tend to overestimate money's power to change happiness. Studies have shown that once basic comfort is achieved, more money brings diminishing returns. It's not the digits that bring joy, it's what they allow you to experience. The security of knowing you can take a break without fear. The warmth of spending time with family instead of chasing another deal. The dignity of saying no when something doesn't align with your values. Those are the real luxuries. And they can't be bought. They're earned through discipline and perspective. Because the richest people aren't the ones who own the most. They're the ones who worry the least. Think about it. If wealth doesn't remove worry, what good is it? There are people making millions who can't sleep at night, constantly watching markets, guarding images, fearing loss. And there are others earning modest incomes, who sleep peacefully because their lives fit their values. That's when you realize, wealth is peace of mind dressed in numbers. And peace doesn't come from how much you have. It comes from how little you need to feel whole. When Housel wrote this book, he wasn't preaching from a pedestal of perfection. He was reflecting as a student of human behavior. A man who had seen enough cycles, booms and busts, fortunes made and lost, to understand that the greatest threat to wealth isn't the market. It's us. Our impatience. Our insecurity. Our inability to sit still while the world tempts us with shortcuts. But once you see the truth behind those temptations, you start to live differently. You become slower to react, quicker to think. You learn to say no, not because you can't afford it, but because you can't afford the chaos that comes with it. You build an inner wealth that no market crash can take away. And that's the ultimate goal, not riches, but resilience. Resilience to live calmly in a noisy world. Resilience to stay humble in success and hopeful in failure. Resilience to keep your head when others lose theirs. Because wealth is fleeting, but wisdom endures. You start to understand that every dollar you save, every temptation you resist, every hour you protect, they're not just financial moves. They're emotional ones. They're declarations that say, "I own my life." And maybe that's the quiet genius of the psychology of money. It's not a book about money at all. It's a book about life, disguised as finance. It's about how we think, how we compare, how we fear, and how we grow. It's a mirror showing us that our greatest investment isn't in a stock or a property or a fund. It's in our behavior. Because while intelligence can make you money, only discipline can keep it. And in a world where everyone is chasing more, the real millionaires are the ones who have mastered less. The ones who wake up without dread, who can walk away when something feels wrong, who spend their time doing what they love with the people they love. That's the definition of wealth no spreadsheet can calculate. So when you think about money, about what you want, what you fear, what you're chasing, Remember this. Money is a story. You are the author. You can write a tragedy of endless comparison or a masterpiece of contentment. You can spend your life running, or you can stop, breathe, and realize you've already arrived. Because, in the end, the goal isn't to have more money. The goal is to have a life that feels rich, even if your bank balance never shouts it. That's The Psychology of Money, a book that doesn't teach you how to make a fortune. It teaches you how to deserve one. And maybe that's the richest lesson of all. If this message resonated with you, subscribe and join us for more wisdom that fuels growth.